3 college students vanish during spring break, 5 months later. Resort worker finds this. 3 teenage girls vanish during spring break, leaving their families shattered and investigators scrambling for answers. But 5 months later, a maintenance worker digging behind a disused tennis court makes a discovery that would unravel a chilling trail of secrets and expose the twisted truth behind their disappearance. The midday sun poured down like melted gold as the shuttle van pulled through the gates of Coral Vista Resort. Palm trees lined the long drive, their fronds rustling in the salt-heavy breeze. Camilla Rhodes leaned out the window, her sunglasses pushed up into her curls, already grinning before the van stopped. "Now this," she said, "is how we do spring break." In the back seat, Tasha Levine clutched her small floral backpack against her knees, staring at the sleek sun-bleached resort buildings with wide eyes. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Are you sure we can afford this place?" Camilla laughed, tossing her arm around Tasha's shoulder. "You're sharing a room with me. That's your discount." Then she turned to the third girl sitting in the middle row, tapping something into her phone with a furrowed brow. "Laura, come on. You're allowed to smile. We're officially not in New Jersey and not responsible for anything but sunscreen and drinks." Laura Bishop looked up, managing a thin smile. "Just texting my mom. She wanted to make sure we landed." "She's going to track your heart rate if you don't turn off your notifications," Camilla teased. "We made it. You're here. Let's do this right." As they stepped out into the hot afternoon, a young bellhop appeared, wheeling a luggage cart. Camilla handed him their room confirmation, and the girls followed him across polished stone tiles and under breezy archways. The resort was quiet, midweek and off-peak, but it still hummed with the easy rhythm of luxury. Water lapping in the pool, distant music from the beach bar, the scent of coconut oil and chlorine in the air. Their room was on the second floor, overlooking the main pool. It was larger than they expected. 2 double beds, a sleeper sofa, and a small balcony with a partial ocean view. "This is insane," Laura said quietly, setting down her suitcase. "It's, too nice." Tasha dropped onto the edge of the bed and bounced once. "I've never stayed anywhere like this." Camilla opened the mini fridge, spotted complimentary sodas, and popped one open. "Girls, this is the best decision we've ever made. 4 nights, 0 responsibilities." Laura's smile faltered, only slightly. Later that afternoon, they changed into swimsuits and headed down to the pool. The sun had mellowed, casting long shadows over the lounge chairs. Camilla chose the one closest to the edge and stretched out with her headphones in. Laura pulled out her paperback novel, content to read, while Tasha wandered toward the poolside. Bar for a lemonade. That's when she met him. He was crouched next to a light fixture under the awning, screwdriver in hand, a utility belt slung low on his waist. He looked early 20s, tan skin, close-cut hair, and a casual confidence that seemed to stretch with the heat. "You're going to trip over that cord," he said without looking up. Tasha blinked, stepping back awkwardly. "Oh, sorry, I didn't even see it." He finally looked up and smiled. "No harm done, just fixing a few of these old lights. They like to short out when the humidity spikes." He stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "I haven't seen you around. First time. Here?" Tasha nodded. "Yeah, we just got in." "Well, welcome. I'm Brent. Maintenance, security, whatever needs doing." His eyes flicked briefly toward her wrist, where she was fidgeting with her bracelet. "You here with your boyfriend?" Tasha blinked, then shook her head. "No, just friends." He smiled again, slower this time. "That's even better." Before she could reply, Camilla's voice cut across the pool deck. "Tasha, you getting that lemonade or making friends?" Tasha flushed. "Sorry, got to go." She waved awkwardly and jogged back. When she reached their chairs, Camilla raised an eyebrow. "He's maintenance. That's all you need to know." Laura looked up from her book. "He's like 10 years older than us, minimum." Tasha rolled her eyes. "He was just being nice. You guys are always so suspicious." "Nice is one thing," Laura said. "Asking about your boyfriend? Come on." Tasha didn't argue, but her smile lingered longer than it should have. That evening, After dinner at the beachfront grill, the girls changed into oversized sweatshirts and wandered down to the water. The beach was mostly empty, just a few couples, walking, the occasional laugh drifting from somewhere downshore. Laura walked a little ahead, her flip-flops dragging through the sand. She was thinking about her camera, she hadn't taken it out yet, and about how odd Tasha had been since the pool. Camila was talking about their plan for tomorrow. Parasailing, maybe a boat rental. Tasha laughed when she should, but didn't say much. Laura turned back toward the resort and stopped. On the upper pool deck, near the maintenance shack, stood a figure leaning on the railing, watching. She narrowed her eyes. It was too far, to be sure, but she recognized the posture, the lean, the casual stance. Brent. She didn't say anything, but a chill climbed her spine. They were all asleep when Laura woke again. It was the middle of the night. The room was dimly lit by the clock display and the faint glow of the outside hallway bleeding through the curtain. At first, she didn't know what had roused her. Then she heard it. A soft, metallic click, like someone trying a door handle. Gently, slowly. Her breath caught. She sat up in bed listening. Another click. Then silence. Laura crept out of bed and crossed to the door, pressing her ear against it. She heard nothing. The peephole showed an empty hallway. She stood there for a moment, palms clammy, then locked the deadbolt. It had already been locked, but she didn't remember checking it before bed. By morning, the room was flooded with sunlight, and Camilla was up first, already rooting through her tote bag for sunscreen. "Pool by 10?" she asked, stretching. "We are not wasting good weather." Laura sat at the table with a cup of hotel coffee, staring out the window. "Did either of you lock the door last night?" Camilla shrugged. "I always do. Why?" "I thought I heard something, like someone trying the handle." Camilla looked unconcerned. "Probably just another guest stumbling around drunk." Laura glanced at Tasha, who was pulling her hair into a braid. "Did you hear anything?" Tasha shook her head. "I was out cold. I don't think I even moved all night." Camilla grabbed her sunglasses. "This place is safe, Laura. Stop overthinking everything. Just relax." Laura nodded slowly, but unease crept along the edges of her thoughts. She wouldn't say it out, loud. Not yet. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there, right outside their door, watching, waiting. The fire pit roared just beyond the shoreline, sending waves of orange light across the sand. Laughter and music blended with the steady crash of waves as guests gathered in loose circles, drinks in hand. Camilla was already at the center of it all, barefoot, twirling in her sundress, holding a plastic cup of something pink and fizzy. Laura stayed closer to the fringe, camera in hand. She'd snapped half a roll already, silhouettes against the flames, sparklers in motion, the outline of palm trees like cutouts against the darkening sky. Tasha stood between them, physically present, but emotionally drifting. She wore a lavender swimsuit under a white cover-up, one hand cupped around her drink, the other absent-mindedly brushing hair from her face. "Come on," Camilla called, waving her over. "We're dancing. No excuses." Tasha smiled faintly, stepping toward the group as a fast-paced reggae beat thumped from the Bluetooth speaker someone had propped on a folding chair. Laura lowered her camera and moved to sit on the edge of a low wooden bench carved from driftwood. She liked the music, the movement, but something about the night felt unbalanced, like the tide had shifted without them noticing. She scanned the area beyond the firelight. There, near the vendor tents, half in shadow, was a figure standing still, not talking, not drinking, watching. She lifted her camera instinctively, zoomed in. It was Brent. He leaned against a pole with his hands in his pockets, eyes tracking the girls across the sand. His expression wasn't relaxed or curious. It was focused, measuring. Laura lowered the camera again. She felt her jaw tighten. About 30 minutes later, she returned to the makeshift lounge where they'd dropped their things earlier in the evening. A few towels, Camilla's sandals, Laura's small canvas bag with her backup lens and film rolls. She frowned. The bag had been moved. It wasn't how she left it. The zipper was slightly open, and the strap was laid across the towel instead of under it. She crouched and quickly checked inside. Nothing missing at first glance, but her heart ticked faster. Camilla wandered back at that moment, cheeks flushed and hair tousled. "Having fun yet, Nancy Drew?" she teased, taking a long sip from her drink. "Did you touch my camera bag?" Laura asked. Camilla blinked. "No." "Why?" "It was unzipped." "I didn't leave it that way." Camilla rolled her eyes. "It's windy, or maybe one of the kids kicked it by accident." Laura zipped it fully and pulled the strap over her shoulder. "It just wasn't like that before. You seriously need to relax. It's spring break, not a stakeout." Laura didn't reply, but she didn't sit again either. 10 minutes passed before Tasha reappeared, walking slowly along the edge of the firelight. Her head was down, her drink was gone. Camilla waved her over. "Where'd you sneak off to?" Tasha hesitated, then offered a weak smile. "Just needed air." "From the ocean?" Camilla teased. "Dramatic." Laura was watching her closely. Something was wrong. Tasha's posture was tight, like she was holding something in. Her expression didn't match her words. Her hair was slightly damp near the scalp, and her bathing suit strap, Laura's eyes caught on it, was twisted half off her shoulder, the plastic ring at the top nearly broken. "You okay?" Laura asked quietly. Tasha nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." Camilla, drunk and glowing, didn't press. "Let's head back soon then." The girls left the beach just before midnight, their flip-flops slapping against the paved walkway as they passed the empty bar and quiet pool deck. The resort had settled into a late-night hush. Camilla walked ahead, arms swinging, still slightly buzzed. Laura kept pace beside Tasha, who hadn't spoken again since leaving the fire. Her silence was no longer just quiet. It was unnatural, withdrawn. Laura reached for her arm once, then pulled back. They reached their suite, and Camilla was the first to open the sliding balcony door to let in fresh air. Laura flicked on the lamps, checked the locks again. Tasha moved to the bathroom wordlessly, shutting the door. Camilla flopped onto the bed, pulling out her phone. "Going to check in with Mom real quick so she doesn't go nuclear." Laura took off her shoes and set her camera bag on the desk. Behind her, Camilla was speaking softly into her phone. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to say I love you. Everything's okay. I think I messed up tonight, but don't freak out. I'll explain later. Talk tomorrow." She hung up, eyes unfocused. Laura turned. "What do you mean you messed up?" Camilla blinked, as if not realizing she'd said it aloud. "It's nothing, just boy stuff, we're fine." But her tone didn't sound fine. Laura stared for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." Sunlight streamed through the pale curtains, washing the room in muted gold. It was nearly 10 a.m. when Janessa, the housekeeper for the East Wing, rolled her cart to room 214. She knocked lightly at first. "Housekeeping?" No answer. She waited a moment, then knocked louder. "Housekeeping, anyone inside?" Still nothing. Janessa frowned. The girls had been vibrant, chatty, even left a thank you note the day before with 2 crumpled dollar bills. It wasn't like them not to respond. She pulled out her master key, slid it into the lock, and opened the door. What she saw made her pause. The room looked wrong. Drawers were open. The bedding on one of the beds was half pulled off, sheets tangled and twisted, like someone had been in a rush. The other bed was untouched. A single sandal lay tipped on its side near the coffee table. The desk chair was knocked slightly askew. One open suitcase lay emptied out on the second bed, and the other 2 were nowhere in sight. The bathroom light was still on. Steam had faded, but the mirror was streaked, and the countertop was cluttered with abandoned items: mascara, a broken lip gloss, an open brush with strands of blonde hair caught in the bristles. The towel rack was bare. The balcony door was cracked open. A light breeze stirred the corner of the curtain. Janessa stepped back slowly, her stomach knotting. She remembered their names: Camilla, Laura, and Tasha. They were supposed to check out tomorrow. She reached for her walkie. "Security, this is Janessa," she said, voice sharp. "I'm in room 214. The girls are gone. Their things are gone. I need someone up here immediately. What did Camilla really mess up? And was Brent part of it? How do 3 girls vanish from a hotel room without a trace? Drop your theories in the comments. Hit that like button and keep watching to find out what really happened. In the days that followed the girls' disappearance, Coral Vista transformed from a quiet spring getaway into the center of a frenzied investigation. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Search dogs were brought in from Miami. Law enforcement cordoned off the beach, the pool deck, the maintenance tunnels. Guests were questioned. A temporary media van parked at the resort's main gate and stayed for a week. Detective Maren Cross was there from day one. In her 40s, composed and accustomed to digging beneath appearances, she had worked homicides, trafficking cases, and too many missing persons cases that didn't end with someone walking home. From the beginning, the case pulled at her in a way most didn't. 3 girls, a room left in disarray, personal belongings gone, but no sign of a struggle, no witnesses, no security footage showing them leaving the grounds, not by foot, not by shuttle, not even on the beachfront CCTV that covered the main pedestrian exit. It was as if they'd been erased. On the second day, Cross sat in the resort's back office with Monica Rhodes, Camilla's mother, who had flown in overnight from New Jersey. Her hands trembled as she handed over the voicemail Camilla left at 11:42 p.m., the night before the disappearance. "She said she messed up," Monica whispered. "But she told me not to freak out, that she'd explain everything later." Cross listened to the recording 3 times. The message was short. Camilla's voice was quiet, breathless, half drowned by distant music and crashing waves. "I think I messed up tonight, but don't freak out. I'll explain later." That was it. No context, no last words, just silence, then a faint pop from a drink opening in the background. The call ended. Cross scoured guest logs. She tracked all electronic room entries. She had forensic techs examine the suite and the hallway carpets, dust the door handle, and extract partial prints from the balcony rail. Nothing suspicious turned up. Nothing that could tie anyone to the disappearance. Brent Mallory, the resort maintenance worker, was flagged early in the process, not due to evidence, but instinct. Cross had seen his type before, charming, controlled. His record showed he'd been working at Coral Vista for 3 years, never a complaint filed. She interviewed him on day 3. He smiled easily, leaned back in his chair with a mechanical calm. "I know who you're asking about, the girls from 214. I fixed the ceiling fan in their hallway a few days ago." "Did you interact with them directly?" Cross asked. He shrugged. "One of them, Tasha, I think, asked about the pool hours. That's it. Seemed like nice kids." He was clean-cut, well-spoken, and unshaken. Cross walked out of the interview room with her gut twisted, but no evidence to hold him. She continued digging. Laura's camera, which her friend said she carried everywhere, never turned up. Security combed the beach bonfire site and nearby trash bins. Nothing. And Tasha's key necklace, a thin leather cord with an old-fashioned silver key, was also missing. Her mother confirmed it was a gift, something she wore daily, even in the shower. Both were added to the report as missing personal items. By the 4th week, search efforts slowed. The press thinned out. The volunteers from local colleges stopped coming. Maren Cross stayed longer than most. She reviewed every piece of footage again, frame by frame. She hiked the trails near the resort's edge. She walked the employee exit routes herself, trying to imagine how 3 girls could disappear without a single witness. One night she sat in her motel room with the file open in her lap. Camilla's photo stared up at her from the top page. Wide smile, wind-blown curls. A teenager who was supposed to be days away from graduation. Cross poured herself a coffee and made notes until dawn. None of it changed anything. On day 91, the official order came down. Case declared inactive. Reassigned Detective Cross. She didn't argue, but she didn't let it go either. She kept the voicemail on her phone. The air behind the tennis courts was heavy with salt and heat. August in southern Florida meant thick humidity, the kind that wrapped around your arms and neck like wet cloth. Most guests at Coral Vista didn't even know the tennis courts existed. They'd fallen into disuse years ago, hidden behind a high wall of hedges and a rusted chain-link gate kept loosely padlocked. Javi Delgado unlocked it with a borrowed key, wheeling his spade and trenching tools behind him. He didn't complain. When his supervisor handed him the job, he never did. Javi had learned long ago that the fewer questions he asked, the longer he could stay in one place. The assignment was simple. Dig a shallow trench along the fence line to lay piping for a new drip irrigation system. Easy enough, though the ground was dry and uneven, the type that hadn't been touched in years. He started around mid-morning, after the worst of the sun had crested. His boots crunched over cracked earth and scattered palm debris. The area was overgrown, yellowing fronds, brittle sticks, and thorny weeds that had pushed through the old clay border of the courts. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, quiet. He liked that part. Javi set the trench line, marked it, and got to work. The soil gave reluctantly, packed with stones and long snaking roots. After the first foot, he paused to wipe sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. Then, about 2 feet in, his shovel caught. Not a rock, something hollow, dense, metallic. The sound reverberated. He crouched, cleared the dirt with his hands, and hit a zipper. It was a suitcase, medium-sized olive green, with rusted wheels, and torn fabric around the corners. Dirt clung to every seam, and the handle had snapped off entirely. Javi hesitated, then glanced behind him, though no one ever came back here. With one more tug, he freed the whole case from the ground. The lock had long since rusted. The zipper was mostly intact, the pull tab crusted with earth. He brushed the top layer of dirt away and unzipped it halfway. The smell hit first. Faint, but musty. Organic. Wrong. He opened it fully. Inside was a beach towel balled around something. He pulled it back and saw 2 tangled swimsuits, one lavender, one teal. The lavender one had a broken strap. Next to them was a cracked cell phone, screen shattered, coated in grime. Near it, nestled deep in the towel's folds, was a delicate silver bracelet caked with dirt, but still catching light. He picked it up carefully. The inside was engraved in tiny, uneven letters. Love. Mom. Javi froze. He had seen the flyer. He had seen the photos. 3 girls smiling in sunshine. One of them wore this bracelet. In the photo, Camilla. His chest tightened. He dropped the bracelet back into the suitcase, breathing hard. It wasn't trash. It wasn't forgotten. It had been buried, hidden, deliberate. Javi replaced the items, exactly as he found them, zipped the suitcase shut, and pushed dirt back over it. Not all the way, just enough to hide it until someone official arrived. His hands trembled. The soil clung to his palms. He didn't go to the resort office. He didn't tell his supervisor. He walked to the maintenance shed, retrieved his phone from behind a ceiling panel where he kept it stashed, and stepped outside to the utility road. With shaking fingers, he dialed a number from memory. He'd seen it posted in a cafe window a few months back, part of the original missing persons poster, still faintly stuck in his mind. It rang twice. Tip line for Collier County Sheriff's Office, go ahead. Javi looked around to make sure he was alone. He swallowed. Behind the tennis courts, Coral Vista Resort, there's a suitcase buried. You'll want to look. He hung up before they could ask his name. Detective Maren Cross sat at her kitchen table when her phone rang. She had a mug of tea in one hand and a notepad in the other, but her mind wasn't on either. She still followed the Harper case, even though she'd been pulled off it months ago. The call came through her personal line. She answered it halfway through the first ring. "We've got something," the voice said. "Behind the tennis courts, Coral Vista." She didn't ask for clarification. She was already grabbing her badge. Cross arrived mid-afternoon. She stepped out of her car in plain clothes, slacks, buttoned down, hair pulled back tight, and walked past the yellow tape that had just been unspooled by the responding deputy. Javi was nowhere in sight. The trench remained unfinished, but the dirt was already disturbed, and the suitcase had been left half exposed. The deputy glanced up. "We didn't open it. Waited for you." Cross nodded. She crouched and unzipped it. The moment the silver bracelet caught the sunlight, she stood up, hand clenched tight. "Bag it. Get it to evidence," she said. She walked slowly around the edge of the trench, scanning the overgrowth, the chain-link fence. No cameras. No lights, no foot traffic. It was the perfect place to hide something if you never wanted it found. But someone had messed up. Cross took a step back, then looked over her shoulder toward the resort buildings, faint in the distance behind the trees. She radioed forensics. "Bring the original case file back to my desk," she told the responding officer. "We're opening everything again, interviews, shift logs, staff rosters." "Yes, ma'am. And find out who assigned the digging today," she added. They met after dark behind the laundry building, where the hum of industrial dryers muffled nearby voices. Javi Delgado stood near the chain-link fence, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his maintenance pants. He hadn't wanted to talk, but Cross had insisted, calmly, discreetly, with a promise that this wasn't immigration or anything official, just a conversation. Javi sat stiffly, ball cap pulled low, hands clasped, tight between his knees. "You're not in trouble," Cross said gently. "I'm not with ICE. I don't care about your papers." She paused. "You found it buried?" she asked gently. No notebook out, no recorder visible. He nodded. 2 feet down. The soil was packed tight like it had been there a while. "You did the right thing," she said. "If you hadn't uncovered that case, I didn't know what it was," he cut in. "But I saw the bracelet and I remembered the flyer, the picture of the girl with it." "That was Camilla Rhodes's," Cross said. "That bracelet belonged to her. It was one of the last things her mother described before we lost the trail." Javi swallowed hard. "I didn't want to touch anything after I saw it. I buried it again a little just until someone else could come." She nodded. "That was smart." Javi glanced behind him. "Please don't tell my supervisor. If he knows I made the call, I lose my job, maybe worse." "You won't be named," she assured him. "Your part stays off the record." He hesitated, then added, "It wasn't the first time I saw something strange back there. A few months ago, someone else was always around that spot, walking the perimeter. Didn't make sense. No guests go back there." Cross looked up. "Who?" "I don't know," he said quickly. "Could have been anyone." But his tone said more than his words. The next morning, the story exploded. A local blogger picked it up first, citing an anonymous source who claimed a resort worker had found a buried item of interest. Then came the headlines. Evidence linked to missing teenagers found on resort grounds. Within hours, national outlets were reaching out. Cable news played B-roll of the Coral Vista poolside, the entrance archway, and file photos of the girls, smiling on the beach just days before they vanished. Monica Rhodes stood behind a podium in front of a generic meeting hall across from the resort. Her voice was firm. "My daughter Camila and her 2 friends did not run away. They didn't get lost. They didn't leave on their own. Something happened to them here." Behind her stood enlarged photos. Camila's smiling face, Laura's camera, Tasha's necklace. All now pieces of a puzzle that had gathered dust until the suitcase had been found. "I am calling on Coral Vista to open all records, guest logs, employee files. Every hallway camera, every corner of this place needs to be searched, because someone still knows what happened." Cross stood in the crowd of reporters, face expressionless beneath her sunglasses. Monica's voice was steady, but her hands trembled on the podium. Cross had interviewed dozens of parents in her career, but Monica never let grief cloud her purpose. That made her dangerous to anyone hoping this case would disappear again. Inside the Coral Vista administration wing, things were less composed. Evan Strickland, resort manager, paced behind his desk while PR staff fumbled through call logs and press statements. "This could be anything," he said, not for the first time. "A prank. Someone's idea of stirring up old rumors. We don't even know how long that suitcase was buried." Cross sat across from him, hands folded, letting him spiral. He gestured to the stack of incident reports beside her. "We're a family resort, detective. We can't have the media suggesting we're sitting on a crime scene. That's defamatory." "What about your staff records?" she asked calmly. Can I see employee schedules from the week of April 12th? He blinked. That was months ago. Most of those people are seasonal. Then I'll need full files on all permanent staff, especially maintenance. Anyone who had access to the service paths near the tennis courts. Strickland looked at her like she'd spoken in another language. We've already handed over what was required, he said carefully. Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is. Cross stood. It already is. Back at the county field office, the found cell phone sat disassembled on a static-proof mat. The tech team had already confirmed it had been factory reset, but some residual GPS data had survived. Just enough. We recovered about a dozen location pings, the tech said, pointing to a map on the monitor. Mostly standard guest areas, common spaces, but see these? A tight cluster of blue dots glowed in the far southern edge of the property. This location comes up multiple times, early mornings, late nights, same coordinates. The phone sat here for long stretches, days maybe. Cross leaned in. That's behind the courts. The tech nodded. Right along the outer maintenance fence. Cross said nothing. The phone had stayed there even after the girls vanished. Either someone left it there deliberately, or someone forgot it after hiding something much worse. Run it against employee rosters, she said. I want to know who was scheduled near that zone. Later that afternoon, a junior staffer reviewing the resort's lost and found storage handed across a sealed plastic tub marked April-May. Inside, water bottles, flip-flops, a sun hat with a faded logo, and wrapped carefully in a clear laundry bag, a camera. Cross unwrapped it slowly. It was a black mid-range DSLR, lightly scratched, no battery, no SD card, but unmistakably the same model Laura Bishop's parents said she brought on the trip. She turned it over and checked the serial number. It matched the original item report. Where was this found? She asked. The employee checked his notes. Logged in on April 18th. No staff name attached, just found near storage area. Storage, which was right next to the back entrance to the maintenance hall. She turned the camera over in her hands once more. If it had been found days after the girls vanished, why hadn't anyone connected it back then? Because someone didn't want it connected. Cross sat in the temporary investigation room that evening, a fresh caseboard behind her dotted with photos and pins. Camilla's bracelet, the phone's GPS data, Monica's press statement, and now Laura's returned camera. She pulled a file. From the stack, staff employment records. One folder was thinner than the others. Maintenance, light shifts, back routes, no photo, no listed prior employer. That wasn't unusual in itself. Seasonal hires often came through third-party contractors. But this file had no emergency contact, no ID copy, no application form, just a name. Hired 2 years ago. She set it aside without underlining it, without circling. Not yet. Too early to say anything aloud, but something about it made the hairs on the back of her neck stir just a little. She flipped the file shut and picked up the camera again, staring into the empty slot where the memory card should have been. Someone had removed it. Detective Maren Cross sat in a cafe just off the Gulf, the kind of place with cracked tile floors and no Wi-Fi. It was Benji Rhodes's choice. Camilla's older brother, 2 years into a degree he dropped after his sister vanished. He was already seated when she arrived, laptop open, a pair of headphones looped around his neck. Thanks for meeting me, Cross said, sliding into the seat across from him. Benji nodded. His eyes were sharper than Monica's. Less grief, more fire. He didn't flinch from the folders under her arm or the small recorder she didn't bother to hide. I've been cataloging tips, he said, tapping the keyboard. Anonymous messages, staff complaints, social media rumors. Some junk, some not. I post what I can verify. I also got this a month ago. Figured you should see it. He turned the laptop toward her. On the screen were 2 sets of architectural plans for Coral Vista. One labeled 1999 Expansion Proposal, and the other updated Site Map 2017. Cross leaned in. At first glance, they were identical. Room grids, service paths, pool access, guest wings. But then her eyes caught it. In the older plan, a crawl space ran along the southern maintenance corridor, cutting under the service road and ending at a storage shed behind the tennis courts. In the newer plan, it was gone, erased. No record of decommissioning, Benji added. Nothing in county permits, it just vanishes. Cross's fingers hovered over the trackpad. Where'd you get this? Benji gave a small shrug. Anonymous email. Might be legit. Might be a hoax, but something about it felt right. Cross stared at the map. It did feel right. Too right. That afternoon, Cross returned to the site. The trench had been recovered, and the dirt had dried under the August sun. A forensic tent still sat over the area, zippered tight, guarding the hole where the suitcase had been found. She passed it and made her way toward the rear shed. This part of the resort was silent, fenced off by overgrowth. No cameras, no guests, only the rustle of leaves and the buzz of unseen insects. She crouched near the shed door, her eyes tracing the ground along the concrete base. Something glinted between a crack in the foundation and a warped plank. She used her pen to hook it out. A key, small, ornate dull silver, slightly rusted from weather. She turned it in her palm. The shape was familiar. She reached into her folder and pulled out the photo of Tasha Levine's necklace, the one her parents described in detail after the girls went missing. A black leather cord and a small decorative key shaped like something from an old jewelry box. They'd never found it until now. She slid the key into a bag and labeled it. Then she walked the perimeter again, eyes scanning the weeds, the edges of the fencing, the door seams of the shed. The ground here was different, softer in places, almost like it had been disturbed, not recently, but not long ago either. Back at the station, Cross reviewed footage again, not the guest hallway feeds. Those had already yielded nothing. This time she focused on the staff-only cameras, the ones that covered the loading bays, utility stairwells, and rear service gates. Most were motion-triggered, stored only in rolling 72-hour cycles unless manually archived. One particular camera, angled over a back hallway near the utility shed, had a broken timestamp. The image was grainy, but the shape was clear. A man entering the service area just past midnight. Large frame, dark uniform, hands tucked into pockets. She watched the clip twice, 3 times. The footage was from 4 nights before the girls disappeared. Then again the next night and the next. Same man, same route, always late, always alone. The 4th night, he carried a box under one arm. She leaned forward. It was too blurry to get a clear face, but the gait was familiar, confident, relaxed, like someone who'd worked those halls for years. She made a note. Cross requested another. Pull on employee files, this time directly from the state contractor registry. Seasonal hires often passed through third-party staffing firms, which kept their own records, bare bones and rarely checked unless a complaint was filed. Brent Mallory's file was still thin. No emergency contact, no prior employer listed, no scanned ID. But when she pushed a bit further, requesting the social security number used to complete his hiring paperwork, a flag popped up. Record mismatch. The number was valid, but it belonged to someone else, a man who died in 2007. Cross froze. She pushed again, this time through her contacts in the Florida bureau. It took 3 hours. Then the file came back. Brent Mallory was not Brent Mallory. His real name was Daniel Carter, and his juvenile record had been sealed. But the summary read like a punch to the chest. Assault, unlawful confinement, impersonation, restraining order violations, all under the age of 18. He'd vanished from the system shortly after release. No forwarding address, no parole contact, just gone. Until now. The permit came through on a humid Wednesday morning. By noon, a team of forensic investigators in white suits and respirators had sealed off the overgrown area behind the Coral Vista service wing and tennis courts. Survey markers flanked the tool shed, and ground-penetrating radar was already sweeping beneath the cracked concrete and packed soil. Detective Maren Cross stood just beyond the caution tape, eyes fixed on the shed's warped frame. She'd passed this area a dozen times in the last week, but this time they weren't guessing. This is the anomaly, one of the techs called, tapping the screen of his equipment. Irregular cavity, less than a meter down, about 5 by 5 feet, rectangular, man-made. Cross nodded. Dig it. The shovel struck plywood within 15 minutes. The officers pulled back overgrowth and mud until the top of a buried A structure was visible, layers of rotted tarp, insulation padding, and what looked like a painted trap door. The wood had warped, but the hinges remained mostly intact, reinforced with metal screws. They pried it open. A wave of stale air, thick with mildew and ammonia, rolled upward. Flashlights flicked on. One officer dropped to his knees and aimed downward. "There's a ladder," he said, voice tight. "And a floor." Cross stepped forward, ducking low. What they'd found wasn't just a bunker, it was a room. The walls were lined with foam panels, gray and uneven, clearly scavenged from different sources. Some were nailed into place, others taped. A single battery-powered lamp sat in the corner, flickering faintly. On the floor, an old cot with a thin, stained mattress, empty food packaging, granola bar wrappers, juice boxes, sealed tuna packets, a rusted camping stove, a soiled blanket. But it was the objects near the far wall that made the investigators fall silent. A roll of duct tape, half used, 2 discarded zip ties, a bent spoon, and several strands of long, light brown hair caught in the corner of a ripped towel. Cross crouched carefully, gloved fingers lifting the hair. "We'll get this matched immediately," one of the forensic techs murmured. She nodded, but her focus was already on the corners, on the residue of soot near the wall, the faint outline of something that had been burned, ashes scattered across a scorched piece of vinyl flooring. She knelt, brushing lightly with a soft brush. From beneath the blackened residue, something emerged. A partial photo fragment, edges burned and curled. It was half a face, blurred and faint. A girl smiling behind a camera, Laura Bishop. Cross emerged from the bunker and stepped away from the crowd of technicians and deputies. She moved slowly, jaw tight, shoulders locked. Someone had used that room. Not recently, but not that long ago either. A few weeks perhaps, maybe less. She radioed dispatch. "Cross to control. I need all employee keycard logs for the last 30 days. Focus on service shed access and southern maintenance gate. Copy that. Sending now." Her phone buzzed a minute later with a time-stamped spreadsheet. One name jumped out. B. Mallory. His keycard had been used to access the south shed 3 days ago. Cross's throat tightened. She keyed her radio again. "Put out an alert. Brent Mallory is now a person of interest and a flight risk. Flag, all transit hubs and regional routes quietly." They searched the employee housing unit that night. Brent's room was at the end of the upper wing, above the supply dock. It was clean. Too clean. Bed made. Toiletries lined up neatly. No laundry. No clutter. The closet was empty except for an old radio and 2 hangers. The mini-fridge had been wiped down. His staff uniform, navy blue work shirt and slacks, was folded on the chair. Cross opened the top drawer and found only a pen and a blank notebook. "Anything?" she asked, as an officer stepped out of the adjoining unit. He shook his head. Neighbors said he was quiet, kept to himself, didn't smoke, didn't party, sometimes walked the property late at night, but never bothered anyone. That, Cross thought, was exactly the kind of man who could go unnoticed, long enough to make girls vanish. The following morning, Coral Vista staff reported a break-in at one of their long unused equipment trailers parked behind the maintenance zone. A padlock had been snapped. Boxes of electrical gear and spare signage had been overturned. When Cross arrived, she scanned the area and stepped inside. The shelves were mostly intact, but something felt wrong. "Anything missing?" she asked. The manager shook his head. "Not that we can tell, just storage stuff." She crouched and spotted the corner of a discarded jacket under the lowest shelf. Pulling it free, she unfolded the navy blue sleeve. It was a resort staff jacket, older model, no longer in circulation. Inside the pocket, a plastic access card, unmarked. She bagged it. "Pull security from the back access gate," she said. "Let's see who left the trail this time." That afternoon, while reviewing the trailer perimeter, Cross found a hole in the rear chain-link fence. The cut was clean, wires snipped and pushed inward, hidden behind stacked crates and overgrown shrubs. Someone had exited here. There were faint footprints in the dirt leading south, out toward the service road and eventually the highway. She crouched beside them, pressing her fingers gently into the dry soil. Heavy boots, size consistent with Brent's build. It started with a motel. Detective Maren Cross traced the alias Brent Mallory through the resort's contracting agency, hoping for a trail. What came back was thin. Just a P.O. box in Jacksonville, a phone number that had long since been deactivated, and a previous job entry that led to a now-defunct beachside motel in Tybee Island, Georgia. The Bayside Inn had closed in 2019 after a fire, but archived employment records still existed in county labor logs. There, tucked between names, was the one Cross had seen too many times. Mallory B., hired under another Social Security number, flagged as invalid, but never acted upon. She made the call anyway. The new property manager, now overseeing demolition of the gutted building, offered to meet her on site. As Cross walked the charred remains of the motel lobby, he motioned to a faded employee board still hanging on the scorched drywall. "That him?" the man asked, pointing to a photo near the bottom. Cross studied it. Grainy, low-res but unmistakable. Same jawline, same flat, cold gaze. "That's him," she said. She didn't find the woman, Alicia Ramos, in any active court records. The 2017 case had been dismissed for insufficient evidence, but her name was in the motel's guest complaints, and the handwritten report filed at the time mentioned an encounter with a male staff member matching Brent's build and description. It took 2 days to reach her. Alicia now lived outside Savannah, managing a thrift shop and raising her niece. She agreed to meet reluctantly, and only after Cross promised the conversation wouldn't be public. They sat at a plastic table behind the store, surrounded by shelves of boxed donations. "I don't know why you're digging him up again," Alicia said, "but if he's still out there, you should be careful." Cross kept her voice steady. "Can you tell me what happened?" Alicia hesitated. "He was maintenance. Showed up with a towel after I complained the AC was leaking. I thought he was fixing it. But then he stayed too long, kept asking questions. He knew I was alone. The way he looked at me." She paused, swallowing hard. "I locked the door behind him, reported it to the front desk. They said he had a quiet nature. That's how they excused it." Cross slid the motel staff photo across the table. Alicia didn't hesitate. "That's him." With the identity solidified, Cross requested full cell tower ping data from the region. A burner phone had been found near the Coral Vista fence. Cut. No contacts, no messages, but the serial number yielded results. The last active ping had occurred 46 miles north of the resort, near a remote stretch of Florida highway that ran parallel to the coast. Cross contacted federal agents for assistance. She met with a liaison from the United States Marshals Fugitive Task Force, a lean man named Arnett, who spoke in clipped, deliberate phrases. "We're running all roadside cameras and gas station surveillance," he told her. "If he's still in Florida, we'll catch him trying to refuel, eat, or sleep. These guys always come up for air eventually." Cross tapped the map spread across the hood of her cruiser. "He doesn't strike me as impulsive. He plans, watches, but he's not far. He's also not stupid," Arnett replied. "But running means slipping. Every hour he leaves a trail." The tip came 2 days later. A man named Howard Grayley, retired park ranger and part-time wildlife volunteer, was clearing brush along the edge of a restricted inlet near an abandoned marina. The marina had been closed since Hurricane Nestor, its buildings rotted and the boat launch long overgrown. "I saw a tent," he told dispatch. "A tarp, really. Blue and gray, hidden under driftwood. Didn't see the guy's face, but he ducked when I passed. Real fast, like he was used to hiding." The location was 90 miles from Coral Vista, close enough to reach by foot, car, or bike in under 2 days. The terrain was swampy and dense, full of mosquitoes and snakes, but also crucially isolated. Cross was in the car before the dispatcher hung up. The drive took 2 hours. By the time Cross arrived, it was nearing dusk. She met Arnett and his agents near the chain gate that sealed the marina's crumbling parking lot. They moved in together, quietly. No sirens. Cross wore her Fetty Arnett had a K-9 unit at the rear, and 2 agents circled wide through the mangroves. The marina was silent, then a flutter of motion behind the old bait shack. "Movement left," one agent called out. Cross raised her weapon. "Show your hands." But by the time they reached the spot, it was empty. The tarp tent was there, as described. Inside, food, wrappers, a thermal blanket, a notebook full of unreadable scribbles, and a plastic bag with cracked sunglasses. But no man. Fresh tracks in the mud told the story. He'd been there, and he was watching them. The call came just after sunrise. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy from a neighboring rural county radioed in. A local farmer had spotted a young woman walking barefoot along the edge of his property. Disoriented, stumbling, covered in scratches and dried mud. She collapsed before I could even ask her name, the deputy reported. Didn't look like she'd had food or water in days. Cross was already driving before the dispatcher finished the report. When she arrived at the small regional hospital, the hallway outside the girl's room was guarded by a nurse and 2 uniformed deputies. Cross identified herself, stepped through the door, and paused. On the bed, beneath a thin blanket, lay Laura Bishop. Her face was thinner than the last photo in the file, sunken at the cheeks. Her feet were blistered and raw. Her arms were bruised at the wrists, but her eyes, sunken and rimmed red, were open. Laura turned her head slowly. Recognition sparked, but she said nothing. Cross stepped forward and lowered herself into the chair beside the bed. "You're safe," she said. "We found you." Laura blinked. "Is Tasha here?" Cross shook her head. "Not yet, but we're going to find her. Can you tell me where she is?" Laura didn't respond at first. Her lip trembled, and she swallowed hard. "He left the hatch open," she whispered. "He never does. I waited, maybe 20 minutes. I couldn't hear him anymore, so I ran." "Where were you?" "I don't know. Water, marsh, maybe. It smelled like salt and rot." Cross leaned in. "Was Tasha alive when you left?" Laura nodded. "Barely. She didn't wake up yesterday, but I could feel her breathing." "Do you remember how long you ran?" "I just kept following the sound of cars," Laura murmured. "I didn't stop until my legs gave out." Laura's fragmented details, rotting, floorboards, dripping sounds, a rusted green tub near the door, matched a place Cross had seen before in archived reports. An abandoned wetlands ranger station, long decommissioned and rarely patrolled, sitting empty off Route 19, less than 30 miles from the marina. By late afternoon, Cross and a tactical team arrived on site. The building was half sunken into the surrounding marsh, vines clinging to the sagging roof. A broken porch step gave way under one officer's boot. Inside, the stench was immediate. A battery-operated fan rattled in the far corner, barely spinning. Behind a locked interior door, they found Tasha Levine. She was curled on the floor, unconscious, wrapped in a blanket so thin it was nearly translucent. Her lips were cracked, skin pale. A slow, shallow breath moved her chest. Cross knelt beside her as medics rushed in. "She's alive," someone called out. "Get the IV ready, she's dehydrated." In the adjoining room, the floorboards had been pulled up and relayed hastily. Beneath the boards, tucked into a small crawl space, the team found a balled-up towel and a bracelet clasped around a loop of thread. It read, "Love, Mom, Camilla's." The discovery prompted a final search of Coral Vista's older infrastructure. Cross ordered a team to scan the perimeter around the resort's long decommissioned generator building, now used only for backup power storage. It stood at the edge of the original resort footprint, fenced off and partially eroded by years of salt air and neglect. Near the foundation, the GPR unit flagged a shallow cavity. It took 2 hours to excavate. At just under 3 feet, the shovel struck cloth. Beneath it, a girl's remains, wrapped in a beach towel, bones curled inward, the surrounding soil compacted and silty. Forensic ID was confirmed that night. Camilla Rhodes. Cross made the call herself. Monica answered on the second ring. She said nothing at first, just breathed into the receiver. Cross's voice was low. "We found her. I'm so sorry." There was no scream, no sob, only a whispered, "Thank you for not forgetting." 48 hours later, surveillance cameras picked up a familiar figure at a gas station near Gainesville. He was unshaven, wearing a trucker's cap and sunglasses. He lingered at the pump longer than necessary, eyeing the road behind him, checking the store window reflections. Brent. He walked inside, purchased water, a protein bar, and a can of compressed air. When he exited, 3 unmarked SUVs blocked the lot. He hesitated, one hand going to his waistband. "Hands up!" an officer shouted. "Don't move!" He froze, raised his hands. Inside his duffel, rope, gloves, an empty prescription bottle, a notebook. In one of the interior flaps, folded tightly, was a photograph of Camilla, Laura, and Tasha on the beach, taken from a distance. Cross arrived 20 minutes later. Brent sat cuffed in the back of a cruiser, eyes blank, jaw slack. She didn't speak to him. Not yet. She just stood outside the door, breathing in the stale air of the moment, and finally let herself feel the weight of what had nearly disappeared forever. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the sentence aloud. Brent Carter, formerly known as Brent Mallory, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the abduction, unlawful imprisonment, and murder of Camilla Rhodes. Additional sentences apply for the kidnapping and abuse of Laura Bishop and Tasha Levine. There was no outburst, no gasp, just the slow shuffle of pens returning to paper as reporters scribbled notes and photographers lowered their cameras. Brent sat expressionless, hands clasped on the table in front of him. He didn't look at the gallery, didn't flinch. He stared at the floor, like the words barely belonged to him. But the voices that followed did not. Laura took the stand first. She wore a black blazer and her hair down, longer now than it had been in the last photo taken before she disappeared. Her voice wavered at first, but as she described the weeks in the bunker, the darkness, the hunger, the endless silence, she steadied. Then came her final line. "We never stopped screaming," she said, her eyes fixed on Brent. "You just stopped listening." The room fell breathless. The clip went viral within hours. Tasha's testimony came the next day. She cried through most of it, pausing between sentences to breathe, but she never left the witness box. She described the fear, the waiting, the way Brent separated them, used their fear against them. "My best friend died thinking we weren't going to make it," she said, voice cracking. "But we did." She stepped down and sat beside her parents, her hand wrapped tightly in her mother's. Brent was escorted out without looking back. Monica Rhodes buried Camilla on a clear October morning in the same cemetery where her husband had been laid to rest 8 years earlier. The headstone was simple, white granite, beveled edge. Her name etched beneath a line of ocean waves and a dove in flight. Camilla Elaine Rhodes, 2004-2023. Loved, found, free. A soft breeze moved through, the rows of trees above, scattering golden leaves across the grass. The service was quiet, only family, a few friends, Laura and Tasha sitting close. Monica stood at the casket with one hand resting on the polished wood. She didn't cry during the eulogy. She had done that already for months, for years. Instead, she whispered something no one else could hear and pressed her daughter's bracelet into the soil before the casket was lowered. Camilla had always wanted to swim with dolphins. She never got the chance. But now, at least, she was no longer lost. On the edge of a quiet cemetery an hour outside of Tampa, Marin Cross knelt beside a modest grave. It was overgrown at the corners. The photograph in the frame, now weather-faded but still recognizable, showed a young girl in a red jacket grinning into the sun. Her niece, Abby. Cross had come here every year on the same week. Usually alone, usually quiet. She never stayed. Long, just long enough to remember what it felt like the day Abby vanished, the day they found her, and the day they didn't get there in time. But this year felt different. She placed a single white rose beside the photo, her fingers lingering on the edge of the stone. "I found them," she said softly. "The ones no one else thought we'd see again. We brought them home." The wind shifted, cool against her face. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her slacks. Then she walked back to the car, pulled the cold case file from her passenger seat, and opened it one last time. Inside, Camilla's missing poster, Laura's photo, Tasha's hospital form, a diagram of the buried crawlspace, and a printed transcript of Brent's first interview. She stared at it all for a moment longer, then she hit delete. Back at her desk, Cross leaned back in her chair and stared at the wall of now closed cases. Some had red stamps, others only initials. Camilla's file sat dead center, the final evidence label already sealed in the box. A younger detective stepped into the doorway. New case just came in. Runaway, 11 years old. Jacksonville PD's flagging it as routine. Cross looked up, then back at the box. She stood. "Let's go find her," she said. As the room emptied and the door swung closed, Cross reached into her drawer for the small drive that stored her personal records, cases she carried herself off the books. She moved Camilla's folder to the archive. Then, under her breath, she whispered, "We bring them home." And she meant it. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already and subscribe for more.